everyone. Welcome to the Up Your Confidence podcast. I'm excited to be here today. This is going to be a lovely conversation. I've had Juliana in the past on the Up Your Confidence podcast. I've been on her podcast as well. And I wanted to kick off the year, with our guest speaker and specifically with Juliana for so many reasons. She has been on this podcast and I love her work. She's super passionate about her work. So let me read a little bit about her bios. And if you are a listener, you have probably heard her. She has been on the podcast about 2 years ago. So welcome back. And Juliana is a founder of Naturally Joy, Inc. She's a holistic menopause transition expert, the host of Confidence from Within podcast, and author of the Amazon best-selling book, Release, a woman guide to releasing weight in midlife through becoming your body best friend. I love it. So that is a book that had just been released, I think, in less than 6 months. And as soon as I saw her book, and she has been promoting all last year, and congratulations on being on the best-selling book list, because that's a lot of effort. So I wanted to have her on the podcast. So she's also a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, board certified by the American Association of Natural Wellness Practitioner, university trained with a master's degree in science, registered Bach flower practitioner, and trained in human behavior by Damatini Institute. She's on a mission to provide a new model of care for weight loss for women during menopause transition and post-menopause, what she called weight release, moving away from the diet mindset and helping women find confidence within. Welcome, Juliana Leamen, to the Up Your Confidence podcast, and Happy New Year 2023.
Yes, thank you so much to have me back, Lisette. It's such a pleasure, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you. I'm sure we're going to have a lot, and I'm so excited to have you here. So we just need to make sure that our guests know a little bit more about you, your work, right? And I'm sure they can go back to previous episode, but I want to dive into the subject of the book Release, right? Because I know when we talked last, I knew that you were doing a lot of work into that area, and you were also working on your book. So I'm so excited, and I want us to, the focus of this talk today and this conversation need to be really on why the book, why do we need to release, and what is the effort that the book need to teach us to do. So how was even creating the book? What was the idea came from, first of all? Maybe we should start there.
Yeah. So I wanted to write a book for about 10 years. It was one of those dreams that it's always been something I knew I wanted to do. I've always been a very good writer, at least back home in my own language. And then writing my master's thesis was a whole new experience for me. So writing was part of one of the ways that I like to express myself anyways. But it took me 10 years to write this book because I think I wanted to write the right book for me, not just a book. So I think it was, the right time, the right place that I knew that's exactly how I want to express this message and reach more people. And then that's when I decided to get started writing the book.
Awesome. I always say we all have a book within ourselves. It's like a baby, right?
Yes.
We just need to birth it at some point. And I'm still working on mine, and I can learn a lot from you totally. So that has been something that have been in your heart. So how the journey has been long, and what is your goal with writing the book? I think you start talking about it, but when you start writing it, what was the goal? What was the message you wanted people to take away?
Yeah. So I'll say there's two main messages that the book kind of combines. So the first aspect of it, I'm very passionate about what happens to women after we turn 40. There's so much focus in women's health and fertility and contraception. And then when we start to, hit perimenopause, it's almost like the focus shifts and there's not as much information for women as we navigate this new phase in our lives. So I wanted to contribute to helping women understand, okay, now that we're not concerned about pregnancy, we're not concerned about not getting pregnant anymore, what is changing in our bodies? So that was the first aspect of it. And then the second aspect, knowing from all my studies and learnings what has changed, how to really empower women to, instead of spending their whole lives fighting with their bodies, to actually recognize it's changing and learn how to support their bodies so that they can get to the same goal of releasing excess weight, if that's what they choose, from a much more peaceful and partnership style approach rather than fighting, starving yourselves, pushing yourselves. So those are the two main driving forces behind the message of the book.
That's a lot. So let's unpack it because full disclosure, I'm right there. I'm those women. So I have a lot of interest in understanding this for personally. And also when you look at the statistic of the people that listen to my podcast, is really from the age of 30 to 50, that age range.
Yeah.
So our listener are women and they're really focused. So what are the challenge that there's so many things that you mentioned, so I'm going to be asking the same question back to the main thing that you mentioned. What are
Yeah.
the challenge that we face as women, over 40, ready for menopause? Why
Yeah.
is so difficult for us to lose weight than in our younger year?
Absolutely. So one of the main reasons is being female, which I know doesn't really help. It is what it is, but we women have the way that our body, biologically speaking, deals with fuel when we eat whatever food that we eat. We have a higher tendency to put on as fat than men do. So a lot of times when I see women go on diets, right, their husbands eating or partners eating the same food, they release so much weight quicker, and then the women following all the rules don't. So that is just a biological difference between genders, number one. Number two, there's a little component of it too that's family history. So if you're someone that your entire family, your genetics come from, other generations that struggle with their weight, that can also contribute. But age is really a crucial factor. And I know that's very much what you're asking here. And there is shifts that happen in our body, especially as we transition into that perimenopause, into menopause, that the hormones that normally help us burn excess fat go down. And then the hormones that help us accumulate fat, such as insulin and cortisol, go up in midlife. So we're really facing here higher stress, accumulations of toxins, right, over our lifelong. We're facing this hormonal ups and downs and the whole emotional component as well. So those are some of the main reasons why it is actually harder to lose weight in midlife. So that is why I have this approach. Okay, so if that is true, those are the cards that we are dealt. How can we make the best out of it? And instead of fighting, the body becomes its best friend.
Okay, so I'm gonna unpack again. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned one thing, right? So age is there. You just talk about it. The family history piece. The
Mm-hmm.
first question that I have is the family history piece related to the hormone as well, or is it two different things that are just working against each other?
Yeah, so it's more on the genetic side, one that can contribute to hormonal as well as a consequence. But there's also some beliefs that if we come from cultures and societies of famine and starvation many generations ago, that those people, for example, my family has that type of heritage. So that there is a higher tendency of the body to want to hold on to everything in case it experiences famine again in the future. So it could also
Wow.
be from that perspective. Yeah.
That is a breakthrough learning. Yeah. So just another kind of conversation when we're talking about generational trauma, that can also be some kind of generational, healthy lifestyle trauma that
Yeah,
maybe your body hold. Is that what I'm hearing?
it could be that as well on the
Mhm.
emotional side, not just physiological side. And there's even some studies done, which I think are so fascinating, using like lab rats and mice, and they propagate fear into, say, 3 and 4 generations ago through like little shocks, right, in the lab. And they continue to see the fear in the offspring, the baby mice, even though they were never shocked before. They had an even bigger fear response. but it was 3 or 4 generations back that their ancestors had the fear response physically in their bodies. So some of those research shows that potentially some of our emotional traumas and baggage of this lifetime could actually be ancestrally passed down to us as well. So there's so much of it that I think it goes beyond just our physical body, and it all contributes. Like the way I like to say is that it all adds up, right? So we just have to accept that there's going to be a variety of reasons why you find yourself in your situation, which I think helps with the compassion. Okay, I'm here right now. That's absolutely totally okay. What can I do next, to improve, even if a little bit and a little bit. And we keep making those incremental successful steps that eventually results in whatever goal that we have, or we get closer to the outcome that we're after.
This is amazing. This is, it's not amazing in what I'm learning, but it's amazing to learn that, because knowledge is power, right? So once you
Yes.
know that, then even from you, but your perspective as a clinician that help people and a coach, and for me, from a client perspective, it's good to know that there's a nuance happening, right? So
Yeah.
that's, thank you for sharing that. And it
Yeah.
brings to a broader perspective of like the mental health piece of it, because we know, and that's something that I became a super advocate of last year because I had a lot of challenge. And I think, one thing we can solve one thing, and that can have a ripple effect in it through our whole mental well-being. Do you agree?
100%. And one of the messages that I've been propagating more too since last year is the concept of, a lot of the women that I think both of us work with and inspire have big visions for themselves, right? I think we have a pretty similar audience in that
Yes.
sense. And one of the concepts that I've been exploring is the concept that as you work on your personal wellness and your own mental health, you're actually expanding your own legacy. So your wellness is your legacy to the world and how you contribute, right? So it's not just shifting on the weight, and that's just like almost like the consequence. That's never my focus. My focus on the self. Our metabolisms are unique. Our emotional baggage is unique. So honoring that, working with that, with the consequence of changes in the physical body. So I really feel that weight release is that internal game, that internal shift. And I think that is a much more empowered way to address it, especially when it gets hotter as we age,
It is
right?
harder anyway.
Yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, it's just bring to focus the whole motto of like health is wealth, right? If we look at wealth as something that you need to pass on, but legacy, the longer you work on your health or your lifestyle and your well-being, it's going to impact, your wealth, your ability to be here to actually create more wealth and to be able to pass it on. But we got to make sure, to your point, when we're passing things on, we're not just passing money and stock and asset, right? But we also pass
Yeah.
lifestyle and good well-being. And today, because I have kids, these are things that we already passing them on without knowing, because they're already absorbing our day-to-day. So we have to be
Yeah.
a good role model in terms of like showing up in our best way, making the personal lifestyle change that we need to do today so that they're already receiving that legacy today.
Exactly. And in the process is that like really breaking those generational cycles of struggle, you know,
Yes.
even if it's something that's in our lineage, even if it's something that every family member that we can think of has had, I think we all have the power to break that cycle and tell a
Yes.
different story and live a different
Yes.
story, right?
Yes.
It's
Like
part
I
of the
always,
process.
I agree. Lovely. I agree. And I always said, and I'm taking the time on this conversation because I feel like every weight is just a symptom of a lot of other things that we kind of like cover up somehow, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
And I always feel like if you just pay attention to the symptom, you can go deeper, and by going deeper is actually where you resolve everything. I don't know if you agree on that
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we have this joke that we say that, oh, running doesn't run in my family. We don't eat, we thick bone. I mean, especially some culture, right? We're like, oh, we thick bone. But I think it's lifestyle based, right? And I've done enough reading and know that, people we eat together, we play together, we do the same thing together, right? But if we maybe start eating differently and walk out together and don't pass too much stress to each other, we're gonna have a different result. So you have to really understand how you navigate that, because the reason why we're diving into this is because you say family history, and sometimes we clients like to use that as an excuse and say, oh, in my family history we have blood pressure, or we have diabetes in my family history. But that does not mean that you can stop it. You can actually make a personal choice today to stop that from your lineage today, and then that will have a ripple effect, which is very empowering for me on your legacy and your future
Exactly.
generation.
Because just because we got those cards in our card deck doesn't mean you have to play that hand, right?
Oh,
And that's how I
love.
like to think about that. Yeah.
I love that. That's gonna be tweetable. Love it. Let's keep it moving. All right. So I'm wondering, like, now let's talk science, right?
Mhm.
Is there any way, since we all have our different family history, different genetic, and then we have hormone, is there any way tactically that we can trick our hormone as women to just not behave, for lack of better word, so we can align on the goal that we have hormone
I'll,
wise?
hmm I'll say there is a lot of biohacking strategies out there, right? That
Yes,
technically
yes,
the concept is a little bit on the tricking the
yes.
system.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes. The one thing I'll say just before we go deeper into that point that I think is important, even to put it out there, and it's something I'm very passionate about talking about, that fat is actually our friend. So if you think of
Fat
body
is our
fat,
friend. Woo!
yes.
I don't
If
know
you
if I can
think,
tweet that. I need to believe that for myself first of
yes.
all
So let
before
me
I can
prove it to
even
you.
yeah, like, let me do a tangent on this, right? I used to have a diet based on avocado because I love avocado. And this just showed up on my timeline not too long ago, that there was somebody that was trying to do research about when you eat one avocado a day for X number of days, you lose weight. I actually tried, last time I lost a lot of weight, I was eating actually avocado a lot, and
Yeah.
I lost weight. So I do know that fat has some way of helping us also trim down. Is it
Yeah.
true? You
Absolutely.
tell
It,
us.
it's a, it
So
can be
fat is
true.
our friend.
Yeah, and thinking more in terms of body fat, right? Because if you think of body fat in terms of the functions in the body, a lot of people think excess calories, energy storage. That is true, but it's just one of many jobs that fat has. And I like to say this because you need fat to have your menstrual cycle. You need fat to have, sustain pregnancy. You need fat to keep yourself from the cold, to protect your organs. You need fat to think. You need fat to regulate appetite. Fat is essential for survival. So if there's something that important in your body's going to be really good at keeping it where it is, right? There's a lot of strategies internally for the body to retain fat because it has a lot of value. If you think of the money analogy again, fat is just like
The
really
currency. It's like
high
a
paying
currency.
stocks. Yeah. The body's not going to willy-nilly just exchange it for, I don't know, for
Anything.
something not valuable, right? So that is important to know because if you're looking at biohacking and all those things, yes, there's some strategies that work, and then different, maybe extreme diets work for some people. We see them out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it depends on what you're looking for. Like, is this strategy of biohacking something you can maintain for 5, 10, 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not, right? Especially if it's extreme. And two, is this long term contributing to your actual health and wellness, right? Because I think, especially in midlife, I think that is a primary concern of mine and my clients rather than getting there quickly. It's more about getting there healthily, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
about at least for me at this point, and everybody that is probably listening to us, it's really about longevity, right? Because most of us has tried to lose weight. We probably have even achieved it, and then we gain it again and we lost it again due to, the maternity. But then when
Yeah.
we on the other side of, perimenopause, as you mentioned, there's no longer the calculation of I need to breastfeed, I need to be pregnant. So now I feel like you have a clear trajectory, pretty much,
Yeah.
if for lack of other word of expressing that, right? You have a clear trajectory going forward from your 40s to really maintain. And let's talk about, so you talk about fat. Another element is the
Mhm.
muscle. What does the muscle
Mhm.
play in
Mhm.
all this, right? Because fat and muscle is always the one that we're trying to work with. We say body fat, and then how much muscle should we do? Weight training? Should we eat? So let's have the same conversation with muscle.
Yeah. So I would say one of the things that I like to also start with is that I don't like the scale in terms of measuring progress in this phase in our lives.
Love it.
Specifically because if all you do is step on the scale is not telling you how much water, muscle, and fat you have. It's just telling you the combined number, right? So some diets, you may lose a lot of water for a little bit and then gain it back, or you just poop a little bit better or something. So we think we're losing weight when in fact we may be losing muscle mass or water. So it's not really fat loss, which is the outcome that we're after, right? So the first thing I do is pause that. As we age, yes, we will be losing some muscle mass. It's part of the aging process. So at this phase in your life, Lisette, is really important to focus on resistance training to build muscle, which also helps to build bone health, which is so important in this phase in life. But also what is important to know is that the more muscle you have, it's almost like muscle, it's almost like a little if you think of it as a little factory, it actually uses up a lot of energy. So the more muscle you have, the more calories your body will burn because the muscle will consume some of that energy as well. So it is it's not just you look better, toned, and all those things, but it also helps regulate blood sugar and so on by having more muscle mass. So my preferred form of activity will be on resistance training. And the aerobic type that sometimes, depending on the health of the individual, that I recommend is bursts of that HIIT training, the high intensity training, just to raise our metabolic rate. With one caveat, not to push the body so much that then we become so starving and hungry that we overeat and then we almost like overcompensate. Like it has to be enough to challenge you without making us go into starvation mode and then we're eating the whole house because that doesn't work. That doesn't
We
help.
definitely
And,
can't be eating the whole house at this age.
and
But
some women push it too far and then they
mm,
become too hungry. So we want to just be on that right, stage for you. Yeah.
I feel like, uh, do we want to say that muscle activates your metabolism?
Yeah. So you will have a higher metabolic rate than
Mm-hmm.
fat. So that is correct. Yes.
All right, love it. I think I love everything that I heard. I want to come back to something else, but can we talk about bone health? Why is that
Mhm.
important? Because I think you brought that also.
Yeah. So with age, we're going to
Because
be
this is the
losing.
age where we have a joint issue, we have back issue, we have all that, right? So your bone also now at that age is coming into play as well. So I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
comment on that.
So loss of bone mass is just like part of aging as well, right? So even if you're doing exercising in the form of brisk walks, that has some impact without jogging, maybe too much strain on the joints. So I don't usually recommend, but even just brisk walk, daily walks, for bone to stay strong, it needs to be almost like challenged, if that makes sense. So the
Yes.
pressure of exercise is enough to preserve for as long as we can bone health. And that is true for resistance training as well. So it just helps combat the naturally bone loss that comes with aging.
Okay. Awesome. So let's go back to maybe the scale, because I think you do make
Yes.
sure I was curious, like, which I agree, like, but I'm wondering what is the right measurement? Because, like you mentioned, right, we all just the only thing we know is the scale, right? I do tell women that there's so many other measurements, but I would like to hear from you, like, what is your suggested way to know besides just I'm feeling great in my body and maybe everybody should just have their own measurements? What do you think?
Yeah. So for my work in my signature program, I offer women two options because I know if you're somebody that loves the scale, you weigh yourself every day, for me to tell you never step on it again, maybe too much of a jump, right? So if you're somebody that loves the scale, what I usually do for my work is that my program has 3 main milestones. So I say, weigh yourself at the beginning and the end of each milestone. And each milestone is usually for, 3 to 6 weeks apart, right? And as they follow the steps on the journey, they can actually measure the scale. And then we do our waist, our hips, and the bust area. So we just measure if you want, but that's optional. The measurements that are not optional that I teach is what I call going beyond the scale. And instead, what I recommend we measure is our sleep quality, how rested we feel, cravings after meals. We measure things like your mood each day. We measure, in general, like how your clothes fitting when you put on. Do you feel wonderful, or do you feel, oh, this is tight, or wish it was different? So we're looking at all those, more like how you're feeling, how you're experiencing life on an everyday basis. So those we look every day, only because I feel as women, we have all these big goals. We push, 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 and then we get disappointed that we're not there yet. So we track how we feel each day in this very simple little tracker so that we have evidence and data. And I know, data is king. You look back at the data and then you can actually measure your progress. So we set our big goals forward, but I teach them to look backwards to measure the progress. And then they can see, wow, look at that. I'm actually feeling so much better. My clothes are fitting better. And then it comes from the next milestone. They go on the scale and then they see the results, as opposed to letting the scale tell you whether or not you're going to have a good day. Like we determine if you're going to have a good day.
There's no way the
Yeah.
scale ever tell you. I know that I have a habit even if I'm measuring myself on the scale, I don't do that on a Monday. I do that because the worst thing is to get your weight on Monday. It just ruin your whole week or your weekend for that matter.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
love for me personally that sleep quality is top. Is there a specific reason because of the group age or the target audience that you have?
I would say sleep is important always, but
Mm.
definitely important in this phase in life. Like if you're not getting at least like 6 hours of quality sleep, your hormones will be impacted for sure. And the major impacts that we see is that, let's just say, I don't know, you pull an all-nighter or a version of it or something like that, you're going to wake up hungrier the next day. So probably appetite will be a bit dysregulated. And hormones like growth hormone that actually help you sort of burn a little bit of extra fat goes down with poor sleep. So we want to have the hormones that burn fat higher and the ones that accumulate fat lower. And poor sleep flips that scale. So poor sleep usually results in disturbances in our weight release process.
Awesome. So is there a correlation between sleep and appetite?
Yep.
Mm.
Yes. So there's even some studies that say that one actual night of bad sleep that we miss, it messes up leptin, which is a hormone that our fat cells produce to tell you whether or not you are hungry. So the way I like to explain this is like, imagine if fat is a business and it owns HR. Okay. So it basically has the rights to fire and hire. Like, it's out of control, right? So it basically regulates itself, and leptin is this hormone they discover that does, that regulation. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love your analogy. They are so on point. I'm sure I love that you said data is king. So do you in your program, and we're gonna talk about your program a little bit, do you ask your client to track those stuff that we just mentioned, like sleep quality, your craving, all that, like they're tracking for you so that they can maintain it? I love that as well. Now,
Yeah.
let's come back to resistant training because you were like
Mhm.
pretty adamant about that. What does that mean and what does that look like for each person?
Yeah. So for that, like they would have to, just for the safety of exercise, work with my preference is they work with a professional, like a fitness, somebody trained in fitness, right? Because it's not just the fact that lifting weights or using those resistance bands, it can help, but different people have different mobility issues, different injuries. So for that, I'm usually very cautious in terms of make recommendations for that reason. But a good way to even get started, like I said, is those brisk walks if mobility is not too much of an issue. And something that a personal trainer that I collaborated with before recommended, and I think it's such a simple but cool strategy, is that if you go outside and there's like those light pole or lamp posts on the street, that he says that, especially if you're doing a little bit of an uphill type of walk, even better, he says you will walk brisk to one, and then you go real quickly to the next, and then slow down to the next. So use the light post to change the intensity of your walk. And if you can walk and talk, it means that you have good, capacity in your lungs to breathe and walk and talk. If you can't, that's a good measurement to eventually be able to push yourself in those walks while talking. It's free. It doesn't take any equipment, but it's a good starting point for people that don't have, the ability to work out in a gym or are afraid because of potential injury. So I would say that is a good starting point, the brisk walks.
I love the brisk walks because I mean, there's so many benefits, right? There's the benefit of the fact that you get to go outside. So if you don't live in
Yeah.
Canada where it's like cold or whatever, or you live
Yeah.
somewhere where most likely it's sunny, you're gonna get your vitamin D as well. And there have been a lot of research that I've read that just being exposed to the sun has impact to your mood, which was something that was on your data a
Yeah.
checking point. It also have impact to sometimes your sleep quality as well when you get to be a
Yes.
little bit outside and do those brisk walks. So I think that's like a low hanging fruit, easy way that people can take away. I love that. Let
Yeah.
me come back. I think we talk about the challenge. So I cannot believe we are like going through a lot of time, and I'm gonna be cognizant. So we're gonna be finishing up. I want to ask you like your program, right? So
Mm-hmm.
before I asked about the program, so how has been the reception for the book? Because I know it has been around for less than 6 months. How has been the reception so far from your
Yeah.
perspective, right? Because I mean, when you're doing your little baby, you creating them, you don't know
Yes.
how the world is gonna receive them, right? So how has that been so far?
Yeah. I would say has been in my own expectations. It actually surpassed my expectations.
Lovely.
It is a very surreal to, open my Amazon data thing and see all the countries that the book is reaching. That is really exciting to me. And the other thing too about the book that I think is really special is that I just woke up one day, decided I was going to record the audiobook, right? Which we talked a little bit
Yeah,
about. And that experience alone was pretty incredible. Maybe a conversation for another day. But I think that really opened up the amount of people that they can reach. Because, for example, I am an audiobook person. I
me
can
too.
listen to things at 2 times speed and go through so much content. So if you're an audiobook listener, in 2.5 to 3 hours, if you speed it up a bit, you can consume the entire book, right? So I
Mm.
feel we just made it really achievable for women to just consume that in their walks, in their brisk walks,
Yes,
uh, you know,
totally.
in the morning and so on, and really take in the content. But because I also created a whole portal with bonuses with some of the activities and so on to complement the book, I really created this whole experience that you not just get the book, but you also get to taste a little bit of the world. And we do a meditation, and we have this beautiful wellness manifesto that you can print. And so I was very intentional about all the little components to go with the book to really give you a special experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that is amazing. You went above and beyond what I would
I went
expect.
all in. Yes.
You went all in. I love that, and I'm not surprised, right? I love the fact that it has an audio book because that's a game changer, and I love that you
Yeah.
did that. I know I'm gonna come back to you to learn all this little trick because I feel as an audiobook listener for almost 15 years now, I have both. I'm gonna get you a hard book, and I'm also gonna, it's
Same.
already on my audiobook. I like to have both,
Me
because
too.
the best of the world is listening to a book on your brace walk and coming home at night and highlight it in the book.
Yes.
I geek
That is
out.
me. Yeah.
That's me too. So usually when people have like the audio, I'm in the audio and I'm in the hard book too, like looking for what I heard. I want to go highlight it down and make it a quote out of it. So this is like
Yeah.
perfect one for me. I know that, and I also love the fact that you adding a free training to the book as well. That's like, what is that about? And how do you transition people that have the book into the program? Or do you have something like that? How is that working?
Yeah. So the way that I build the free training is that each chapter has a bonus component to it. It's either a little free training or it's a handout or a meditation. So at the end of each chapter, there's a QR code and it's the same for each chapter because I wanted to make it super easy. But whichever chapter that you feel, you know what, I want this bonus, you scan it and it opens the page for you just to download and get your portal set up. And in there, then I have all the different bonuses. So no matter which one you want, you get all all of them at once, all nine of
That's
them.
amazing.
Yeah.
And again, going back to what we were saying, the meditation piece, right? What was the intention behind that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I encourage women to understand is that beyond the physical aspect of releasing body fat, there's also the emotional aspect of it. So the meditation that I designed, it's just something that I got inspired and I recorded. And it's really working on, it's almost like I like to say, if you imagine this golden little broom, and for me it's golden, could be a different color for you. It's almost like we go through all the fat cells and we just like clean it up. You know, it's an
Mm,
energetic release of all that's stuck and building up that needs to go. And I just feel it's a great one to do before bed. And it's almost like this release of this stuck energy that some of us accumulate throughout our lives and the day. And that is just a nice way to look at the fat release from a very unusual perspective. Yeah.
amen. I love it. That's a great addition. So tell us about the 12, I think it's 12-week program, right? A little bit. And then we're gonna tell people how to get the book as well.
Yes. So the program actually, like I'm in a big redesign timing now. So we're actually condensing it to 9 weeks.
Oh,
And a
nice.
big part of it is really, I've been doing the last couple of years, quite a bit of research of all the members that gone through and their successes. So I do a lot of surveys and a lot of data collection. I think it's the scientist in me that is just like built
Correct.
into how I think. So we really took all that feedback and I'm like really reorganizing it to get to the adding some new science, but also get into the outcome at the least amount of effort. That's really important. I work with a lot of very busy individuals and I want to teach you why everything I tell you to do. So there is the knowledge piece, but I know nobody loves the topic as much as I do. So I can talk for hours, but the program is designed to be like to the point. Anyways, so it's broken down into 3 main milestones, with the first milestone being let's just look at that foundation. Let's understand, why is weight resistant and stuck? And let's just get some of the big low hanging fruits out of the way first. So we clean house, number one. And then our milestone 2, we activate fat loss in the body through physical and the emotional side of things. And
Mhm.
milestone 3 is okay, now that we've done that, how can we maintain this long term? Which I think is really a unique part of it because I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but there is a penalty for losing weight, meaning when we gain weight and lose weight, even that in itself becomes harder to maintain long term because the
Mm.
body learns and then it costs you less energy to perform the same tasks, right? So I say this because we know the statistics is 95% of dieters regain the weight, they fail in some way. And I
Yes.
really, really, really want to change that statistics as part of the contribution that I do with my work. So really teaching women how to maintain this long term, how to go with the ebbs and flows of the body, how to have a plan B for the tough days and the holidays and the trips so that it becomes doable. Because everybody says, oh,
Yes.
it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. No, it is a diet. At the beginning, it is a diet because you're
Yes.
changing something, but we can
Right.
then turn it into a lifestyle. And that is really what milestone 3 is all about.
Oh, I love that because and I want us to maybe close on that before we tell people where to find the book. And I love that that's your third part because the challenge is always the plateau, right?
Yeah.
I don't know scientifically what is the thing with the body, But it doesn't matter what you trick it with. Go back to my biohacking mindset, right? Because for me, it's all about tricking your body into, doing whatever you want it to do. And I might be wrong. I'm not the expert, so you tell me. But I feel like however way you trick your body, diet or not, and then you start getting results, there's this plateau that happens later on. And
Yeah.
I think it's what you are trying to resolve with your third part into, instead of being a plateau, maybe make it a lifestyle where you can now navigate that.
Yeah, the first lesson in milestone 3 is called breaking your weight loss plateau. So you're right
Ooh,
on.
I did
You're
not read
literally
anything.
right
I'm just
on.
asking question here. Totally love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Definitely. Yes. So I think that's amazing that you are cognizant of that, because I feel like, at a larger industry level, because I mean, weight loss or weight release, it's a billion-dollar business, I'm sure, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
multi.
want to sell you something. I mean, I even have people these days, Juliana, for your sake, hitting me up in my LinkedIn profile to sell me a diet program. I'm like, okay, did my profile picture, I'm questioning myself, like, did my profile picture say fats? Why are they selling me the program in my LinkedIn profile? I felt like that was a little bit, tiny bit aggressive, like even
Yeah.
commenting on my post, like, I'm like, okay, that is never gonna get me to buy your program. I
Yeah.
don't care how many people you have had in your life, that sells. So just to say that it's a billion-dollar industry, and what's happening is people just hook you onto something. I mean, because I have been through the gamut. I was cleaning my house this week and I trashed something that I had through some program that I will not name, for sleeping. It was a sleep thing that I have to spray in my mouth so that I can, just relax a little bit so I can sleep well, right? But those things don't work because they don't stick. And I think having a program that
Yeah.
stick, which is teaching people lifestyle, is where the game changing is, and then people need to
Yeah.
learn. And I think women, because your focus is women that are busy, that are really experienced, that are on the other side of that, the journey. We know what we want exactly. And I think we have talked about this last time in the podcast, right? We know exactly what we want. We are not young, but we're super busy. So having
Yeah.
something that can really adapt to our lifestyle is increasingly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just say one thing quickly, just because I feel I have to. Last week, somebody hit my LinkedIn DMs offering me a weight loss program. And I'm thinking, you definitely did not read my
Oh,
profile,
now
right?
I feel better, because if they can sell
That's
to you and
what
sell
I
to
do.
me, so I'm not feeling like, okay,
No,
is my face called fat? But if they're hitting
no.
you
People are
on
just
your
hitting
LinkedIn
everyone.
with your book, they're totally lost. I bet it's
Yeah.
the same person. We're gonna check on that.
Uh, but just to answer your question there, like one of the major things that I think is the problem is that when we add a lot, like if we're not doing something yet, is because we don't want to, right? So, for example, I know I don't have to tell you to become a learner and read books and so on. Like, it's just something you intrinsically do because it is important to you. Learning, it is important to me. But if we are not, say, obsessed with cooking and eating healthy and so on, which for some people is what it takes for their weight loss, it's because it is not high on a prioritization list. And a lot of the women that I work with, that's true. We value education, career, family, lifestyle, travel, all those things before we value the tasks that it takes, right, to get that lifestyle. So a big part of what I do, and I use my human behavior training here, is to actually help the mind recognize that by doing the tasks that we don't want to, that, it's easy to feel we're too busy, we don't have time. How can we reprioritize our list in a very meaningful and unique way? But also, how can we understand that by doing the things that whatever it takes to get the body where you want it to be, that is actually benefiting your career, your vitality, your time with your family. So we actually start linking the things that we don't want to do, that we perceive we don't have time for, because if it's important to you, we find time for it, right?
Always.
So I help people find time for the things that they want to do, to go all in. And that is to really using the understanding of how our minds work and how very simple human behavior, how we operate as women. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, for me, I feel like if it's not important, don't bother. Because I mean, but it's crucial too, because we feel like it's important, but we don't want to do the work to get there. I understand that you said the program is revamping. So when is the next cycle opening?
Yeah, so it is open now.
Okay.
Yes, so the new cycle is open now, and anybody coming in now is already coming in into the new portal. Everything is ready to go. Yes.
Awesome. And where can we get the book?
So the book, the best way is to go to naturallyjoyous.ca/book. And I have a little trailer that I put together that really gives you a good feel for what the book is about. And you can, look at some reviews as well and feedback, or on Amazon as well. If you type release and Juliana Leamen, my name, normally the book pops up. It's on Audible, it's on Barnes and Noble as a Kobo and audiobook. So you can, in my website, you have links to all the different retailers as well. If you go to the naturallyjoyous.ca/book, and then from there you can choose what is the provider that you prefer buying books from.
Awesome. And couple of last closing questions, because this is a Up Your Confidence podcast, right? I know you also have your podcast. And for you, and this is might be something we've discussed before, right? How does releasing your weight tremendously increase your confidence?
Mm-hmm. The way I like to look at it is that you don't need to release the weight or anything to up your confidence. I think that's important. What I like to think of the connection there is the release is releasing what doesn't serve you, is releasing those misperceptions, releasing all those old things. We know so much that isn't true, right? So releasing all those limitations of not being able to see your beauty, accept all parts of you today. I think that's where the connection is, because confidence, I think, is just stepping into your authenticity without apologizing for who you are. And I love teaching women to discover who you are and just do it on purpose, right? And I think that's for me where confidence stems from, even if you want to release weight. But I don't believe that they're conditionally related, if that makes sense.
Totally. And what are your confidence habit? This is a question that we always love to ask our guests. What is your personal confidence habit?
Yeah. So I'd say, and this is something that I now automatically practice on a daily basis, but it's the shift between deflective awareness to reflective awareness. And what I mean by that,
Ooh, that's
if I look
good.
at you and I complimented you, right? As soon as we logged in, it's like, you look beautiful, love the college you have on. Instead of looking at somebody and comparing ourselves, which most women do, and putting ourselves down because we perceive the other person looks better or more beautiful or more intelligent, that's deflective awareness. Instead, reflective awareness is almost like if you think of a mirror. When I look at you and I see your beauty, the question I ask is, where in myself do I see an equal amount of beauty? Because we can only
Ooh.
perceive what we have, right? So instead of deflecting and putting self down, putting somebody on a pedestal, I look at you and your beauty and your intelligence, like, okay, where in myself I see the reflection of the beauty I see in you. And that is something I do automatically. So if I feel too proud of myself, I neutralize myself by saying, okay, what in that person do I feel superior to? So I bring it to neutrality. And if I feel inferior to someone, I look for where in them I see reflected in me, because I think that neutrality in perception of being poised and just being very content and grateful for who you are, despite the weight, the scale, the size, I think is really important part of confidence.
Oh my God, that's a game changer. And I love it because that is an intentional daily practice.
Yeah.
So you have to like really, because I believe in nuances, right? And people need to really be able to navigate in that. And that is a very intentional way of just seeing, because the deflection has been rooted in the society lately and has been pretty much part of most of the problem that we have,
Yeah.
confidence trouble that we find ourselves in. So this is a gospel right there that you are
Yeah.
preaching to yourself, but trying to practice as well. I see a book coming on that.
And I'll just add one little piece there, because a lot of times I hear people say, oh, don't judge others. Like, I think that's impossible. We will judge. It's almost how we discern the world. I think the magic is, what do you do the moment you judge? Because every judgment is an opportunity to deflect or reflect, right? So anytime that I'm really ticked off by something I saw on the media, TV, I was like, okay, what in myself am I not loving that person or thing is showing to me? It's an opportunity. Let's work
Yes.
on that. Right.
Yes.
And I think that is really, and then it just feels so poised. It just feels so, almost like those micro moments of feeling so in love with yourself and so grateful. And I think that's the beauty of the process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the grace you give is the grace you
Grace.
should get, you receive
Yes.
as well. I was talking to
Yes.
a friend about that yesterday, clearly. So thank you so much, Juliana. This has been amazing. I will have all the information for your book, for your program on the show notes so we can share with our audience. But all my gratitude for finding the time to join me on the podcast today. All my congratulations on the book. And
Thank
I
you.
will be on brisk walk shortly here. Start,
Yay.
getting the book on, and you'll hear back from me on the program as well. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. Any last word before we depart?
Thank you so much for inviting me again for this lovely conversation. We met, I don't know, 2.5 years ago through the podcasting world. And, I just love to see our journeys unfolding. And you do so many amazing things too, through your charity and all the other things that you do. So thank you for the work you do in inspiring women and allowing me to come to your platform and create space for me to share what I do as well.
Yeah, I mean, the work that you're doing is eternally needed, and we all need your work, your brilliance, and your intelligence, and your kindness in the world. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and stay in touch.
Yes, my
Bye.
pleasure. Bye.